This is Millennium TV, your first business and financial news channel. Welcome to a special edition of the Business Day. On today's edition, we are at a panel discussion organized by the Women's Entrepreneurship Access Center, also known as WEAC. And we'll be joining live right here at Sarova Hotel in the capital city, Lusaka. Various people are coming on board, but before then, just to get an overview of what this panel discussion is, I'll be talking to Mrs. Nambola Kachumi, the executive director of WEAC, will be sharing with us what this panel discussion is all about. It's being held under the theme, putting SMEs at the forefront of economic recovery. Mrs. Kachumi, welcome to the Business Day.
Thank you so much, and I'm glad to be here.
Great. Just for the sake of the viewers who might not understand what WEAC is, what exactly is WEAC all about? What do you do as an organization?
Right. So the Women's Entrepreneurship Access Center, WEAC, as you may know it, is an entrepreneurial community for majority female-owned businesses to have access to various economically empowering tools and resources. So through this platform, we're basically growing networks, business development, mentorship, and addressing some of the key barriers that women-owned businesses face in taking their businesses forward. So one of the key areas that we look at is addressing gender barriers to entrepreneurship, and we do this through supporting entrepreneurs, startups, and SMEs at various levels of business development, working across different sectors, key sectors that have got real barriers for women-owned businesses to penetrate. And so that's who we are.
Great. From the top of your head, would you have an idea how many women's businesses you've supported as an organization from inception?
Right. So WEAC is formerly We Create. We set up in 2015, June to be specific, as an entrepreneurial community, physical, but now also virtual community for women, offering various programs at early stage of businesses, startups, pre-acceleration and acceleration stages, where we are basically looking at supporting the next stage of growth in these businesses. So through these programs from our onset, we've been able to support more than 3,700 women-owned businesses, helping them to go to market as quickly as possible, increasing their success in terms of revenue generation, and exposing them to resources that enable their business growth.
Is there a specific field where you've majorly helped? Is it agriculture, agribusiness? Is it ICT? Or it's general? You don't have any limitation to the fields where these women's businesses are supposed to come from?
Right. So we see a lot of dynamics within the enterprise support space. And our programs obviously are tailored to meet very specific needs of entrepreneurs, helping them to develop at least a minimum viable product to go to market, also helping them to think through scale up. You know, there's a lot that is happening beyond the line of rail. I think we need to begin focusing also on how we can promote inclusion in very specific regions within the country. So our model is very simple. And it also depends on at what level of business participation we are supporting. So I think basically we put out a call for applications depending on the program that we are offering. We have a program called, for example, the Startup Academy, and also the Academy for Women Entrepreneurs, which is being implemented in partnership with the United States Embassy in Zambia, where we're looking at supporting diversified businesses at various levels. And through this program, we're helping entrepreneurs to go to market as quickly as possible. We are targeting businesses at or startups at different ages, different sectors, and we're using a very simple vetting system that also enables us to further understand and make follow-ups in terms of impact, because our concern really is to create a model that enables us also to measure impact.
Because that's very, very important. Yes. That's very, very important, because I think those are areas where most of these entrepreneurs lack how to monitor the impact that they make and the growth.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know what tools you are using. I think I would want to delve on that as well.
Sure.
What tools you use to monitor impact and the growth of each of the businesses.
Right. So first of all, one of the tools that we use across our programs, whether it's early stage startup or incubation programs or acceleration programs, we use what we call the business model scorecard, which is a standard
scorecard.
BMSC, we call it. So it's a standard way of assessing the coachability of a team, their ability to take action, and also the potential that the business has to reasonably go to market and generate revenue. So the goal for that tool is to promote competitiveness, but also to increase the odds of success for any business that goes to market. Because you know, obviously, that we've had a lot of businesses that start up, but they fail. They fail to penetrate, they fail to expand their markets because of various reasons. And so our tools are carefully selected and put together. Obviously, some of these tools are licensed programs in partnership with some of our stakeholders, including the Southern African Innovation Support Program. We're working also with SunBio, the Southern African Network in Bioscience, the German Savings Bank, and so on, to bring these tools to a level that can be localized and promoted in a country contextualized sort of approach. And you talk about the issue of impact. How do you follow up? I think our programs are designed in a way that we have very specific key performance indicators and deliverables that we're looking for. Like, for example, at startup level during our incubation programs, we are looking at certain measures or metrics within a business that enable us to understand their odds of success in the market. So obviously the interest at startup is to have this business move from the informal sector into the formal sector. So one of the key things we look at is business formalization. By the time they go through the incubation program, they should have a registered business that has gone to market. They should have at least an MVP, a minimum viable product. They should also be able to demonstrate how they have moved from idea stage into MVP. In later stages of our business development support, like through acceleration programs, we also have key performance indicators, and we're very key, to follow up, to understand, first of all, the challenges that exist among small and growing businesses, but also businesses that have a higher turnover, because their needs then become a little bit different from the ones that are at startup or pre-acceleration level. So we also look at how much they have leveraged the kind of networks and resources that they've been exposed to. We're looking at also those that have had considerable investment into their businesses, because we run also a program that is looking to support investor-ready businesses, majority female-owned. And so we are looking at how they're able to connect to opportunities for funding. And some of the programs that we offer do have opportunities for funding for our startups. But that is done through a process of very rigorous training. And once they get this funding, like for example, in the AWE program, where startups are receiving seed funding between $5,000 to $50,000 US, which is offered by our partner, the United States African Development Foundation. They are also very keen to see the performance of these businesses that are accessing these grants. We also have opportunities to connect, businesses to non-traditional sources of funding. We have managed to support capital raising for high growth businesses between or up to an investment of $1 million US. As you know, one of the startups that is attending this panel discussion today was recently, invested in by Enigma Ventures, which is a venture capital fund within the Southern Africa. And this is a startup that has been through our process. And we've helped to support capital raising up until profitable exit.
Talking about that, panelists will be joining. I'm even eager to move straight into the panel discussion. Briefly, Taylor, I think there's so much to discuss on what WEAC is doing. I think we should have a more lengthy discussion on this. But today special is a panel discussion. Tell us about what we expect. And I love the theme, by the way. I love the way you've coined it, putting SMEs at the forefront of economic recovery, because I also believe, understand that SMEs are really the backbone of our economy. Yeah. Just a brief about what this panel discussion is about.
Yeah. So I think the issue at hand, today is a very common, or rather it's an intersection for many, enablers, organizations, institutions that are trying to support the growth of SMEs. We know that this is a very important constituency. We know the value that SMEs bring to the economy, the potential that they can generate in terms of contributing to job creation, revenue generation, the country's GDP. We know also that the SME sector, constitutes a large labor force. And so it's very important that we provide a platform for different partners to share information, strategies and interventions that are currently happening from the public sector, the private sector, to enhance a stronger entrepreneurial and SME ecosystem. And this is why, in particular, this panel discussion has been put in place and is quite very important, because we have convened a number of key partners and players from different institutions. This morning, we have a representation from the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry through the Office of the PS to discuss some of the policies and reforms that have a direct impact on SMEs, but also in particular within the COVID context. We also have partners, the Bank of Zambia, as you know, the central bank is very key when it comes to discussing issues of access to finance. And recently we've seen a lot of developments pointing towards how we can recover better economically as a country. So this morning we basically want to understand what is happening. What are these financial facilities or instruments available to SMEs? Where are the barriers in terms of the absorption capacity? We have partners on board like the National Advisory Board for Impact Investing in Zambia, NAB. As you know, impact investing is a growing key sector across the globe. And they will be also highlighting some of the work that they're doing and sharing thoughts around how Zambia can attract impact investment more readily, and how can we position ourselves as a country by pushing SMEs to the forefront of economic recovery. We have Lupia Circle, who is an alumni of WEAC, who recently raised $1 million through venture capital.
I'm eager to see the person that has $1 million.
You have no idea where she had been to get there. And so it's very exciting. And like I said, it's a very important topic. I think we need to continue having these conversations in line with how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected and exacerbated some of the challenges that SMEs are currently facing in the country.
Great. Nambola, you and I think for now we are set for the panel discussion.
Right.
We'll join later on and conclude this chat after the panel discussion, just to share a brief of the key points that people raise in the discussion. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
This is the special edition of the Business Day. We have a panel discussion organized by the Women's Entrepreneurship Access Center, WEAC. We'll be joining that shortly. Then afterwards, we'll be back to close with a special chat with Nambola.
I hope our panelists are comfortable and ready. We'll try to give some good social distance. So if you'd like to sort of maybe sometimes drop the mask a bit and clearly speak to the audience, and you're free to do so. Also would like to let you know that we are going to capture this, then we'll post it and get it out to the wider audience. Because of COVID, we had to keep the audience very small. Thank you so much. Over to you, Nambola. Thank you. We can give him a hand.
Thank you so much, Phyllis. You deserve a hand as well. So good morning, everyone. We're very glad to see you this morning. Thank you to our audience for making the time to be available for this very important panel discussion, which is very close to the hearts of many of us. So we welcome you today. I'd also like to welcome our panelists, a
very diverse group of individuals coming from institutions that are pushing forward policies and agendas to support SME development in Zambia. So welcome and very nice seeing you this morning. So like Philip said, my name is Nambula Kachumi, and I am your moderator this morning, taking you through our discussions. And today we are looking at a very important topic where we are highlighting key economic drivers, the current entrepreneurial ecosystem in Zambia, in line with putting SMEs in the forefront of economic recovery. My panel, which consists, I would like at this point to take this opportunity to introduce them. So we have Ms. Evelyn Chilomo Kaingu, who is the CEO and co-founder of Lupia. I'd also like to mention that Evelyn is an alumni of the WEAC Entrepreneurship Network from our time of establishment. So we've seen her and how her business has grown over the years. So we're very excited that we are on this platform together, just understanding more about what has been happening. We also have Mr. Trevor Hambai, who's the senior partner at Development Finance Associates. I think Trevor's face is not new to most of you. He's been one of the champions of SME development and entrepreneurship and doing quite a lot, in terms of supporting economic recovery within the country. We're very privileged also to have Ms. Brenda Mwanza, who is Assistant Director Financial Sector Development, who is representing Ms. Frida Tamba, the Director Non-Bank Financial Institution Supervision. You're welcome.
So, I'll try my best to summarize because I'm an SME and we have so many challenges, but I'll just narrow it down to the context of financing because that's the sector I come from. A lot of SMEs are really struggling with financing at this point in time, and so they are facing so many income gaps. And the one key recovery that definitely every entrepreneur will need is actual financing. But the actual financing that entrepreneurs will need is patient capital. The way we are designed as financial institutions is to really provide financing with quick turnaround time, which suffocates the small SMEs, and we are not putting out a product that is as supportive for their growth. And so if we are going to see some sort of support that's going to come in from the government in some sort of reform or some sort of policy strategy for specific SMEs, we need to see patient capital being a key driver into supporting so many SME platforms. And eventually, we also need to see a bigger push into the collateral credit guarantee scheme that is actually in place with the Ministry of Commerce. A lot of us are not aware of such a platform, and if we can quickly see that key participation from the ministry, which we believe will see a lot of support and recovery for SMEs, provide cheaper financing for micro entrepreneurs, because I just realized that has been really categorized. For regulators, we would like to see almost immediate sandboxes like other countries have done to accommodate innovative solutions. A lot of this is happening every day. One big opportunity that Zambia, I feel, is sleeping on is social capital, and this is village banking. It's a very big avenue in which the SMEs can tap into and get financing, and very cheap financing to that. And if quickly framework without scaring the masses can be created, because the Bank of Zambia likes to put out such statements, and we get almost freaked out every time we see something in the paper. So if they can be as accommodating, that would be very would be good to see. And for platforms that are bringing in a lot of investment or fostering investments for platforms and SMEs, a lot of what we had to go through, we had the opportunity of having, and because our model is sort of different and is able to mobilize cash almost immediately, a lot of platforms don't have that opportunity because they have to really start the ground up. And so as we foster these platforms, we know investors want a return, and we at least have the opportunity to facilitate affordable or simpler requirements for these platforms to access these opportunities. And then just lastly, to conclude, my point will still drive back to the regulator, which is Bank of Zambia. we still are forbidden with a lot of requirements that you require in terms of looking at non-bank financial institutions, and we feel that needs to be revisited because looking at a lot of key players in the sector are not local but are very foreign, and so that participation we feel needs to be very inclusive and be very inclusive as well for women.
Previously, before the economic reforms of the early 1990s, we all know that the economic system that prevailed in this country was largely driven by the public sector. Post the 1990 reforms, which were spearheaded or championed by the Structural Adjustment Program, we embraced the economic system that permits liberalization, both inland and also in terms of cross-border, in terms of trade. And now, you needed some kind of a referee or regulation. Hence, the Ministry of Commerce, since the early 1990s, there were a number of policies that were done. Some of them even covered aspect of institutional transformation. My colleague on my left from Zambia Development Agency, I think previous they were not the Zambia Development Agency, should have been called the Export Development Board. I'm sure you will say the correct name. I know a lot of institutions which are under the Ministry of Commerce. So, but they were more or less like consolidated. So, and hence we came up with the Zambia Development Agency, comprising of over 6 institutions previously. So this also led to the enactment of an act, the ZDA Act number 11 of 2006, that established the institution. Aside from that, with respect to looking at the needs of the SMEs, we also formulated and enacted the Citizen Economic Empowerment Act, essentially to address the constraints that the SMEs were exposed to. Largely, the SMEs are issues of access to finance, and therefore CEC was established to be able to provide access to finance with flexible terms. Of course, I am aware there are some teething issues with respect to probably documentation, compilation, and submitting the bankable business proposition. These are ongoing. They should be ongoing things that we should all, in a concerted effort, address in order to increase or to achieve the goal of the citizen economic empowerment. We also realize that much as the SMEs can access the funds, the next thing is that they'll be subjected to participate on the downstream market.
As you have rightly put it, the Bank of Zambia put into place the targeted medium-term liquidity facility, financing facility of 10 billion kwacha in response to the difficulties that the economy has been facing, more so after the COVID pandemic. We noted that the productive sectors of the economy were faced with challenges in terms of particularly repayment of their loans and sustaining their businesses because of challenges with financing. So this facility, since it was instituted, had a few teething problems, but I'm happy to report that over time, we have now been able to disperse about 8.7 billion kwacha out of the original 10 billion earmarked. And although 6.9 billion went to commercial banks, we've had 1.8 billion going to the non-bank financial institutions. And as you know, for the SMEs, they tend to benefit more from the non-bank microfinance lending. So we noted, of course, that there's a challenge in terms of the disparity. You notice that the more funds have been going to the commercial banks who tend to find the bigger clients, industry clients, while the small scale and SMEs only benefit, as well as individuals are benefiting from microfins. Now, I think really it's clear that there are two issues here. On the supply side, we've tried to encourage the financial service providers to actually raise awareness in terms of this facility's availability, so that more of them, more clients can come through and negotiate with them in terms of the financing availability to them. On the demand side, we noticed that the SME sector on its own has got peculiar, unique sort of barriers within themselves. The biggest being lack of collateral, effective collateral, and poor financial management. There is also the issue of financial literacy, skills in terms of business record keeping while they are running their businesses. So these barriers within themselves inhibit their ability to approach financing institutions, to get loans. And even unfortunately, some of them will try to approach the institutions to get the loans, find that they are unable to provide the requirements that will enable them. And so more often or not, you find that their loans are not successful. So these are areas where I think it's important that partnerships are breached between the SME associations, the financial service providers, as well as donors and partners, financial partners, to come together to, I think, develop these value chain propositions where there is financial education provided, business skills in terms of record keeping, as well as managing the business, how to access loan facilities from the financial sector. If these things are done, I believe we can actually see a push towards more SMEs being able to afford to access the credit from the microfinance institutions. As a bank ourselves, we are in the process of assessing how the performance has been, so that we can improve on how it can be, we can improve the absorption capacity, particularly for the SME sector. Thank you.
Not only businesses, which is on the demand side, but as I said, holistically, because there's what you call ecosystem, which is as interconnectedness of various players who are working together to really push finance as well as growth for businesses and also other sectors. So we're working with various sectors or specifically players such as the suppliers, and these are people or organizations who provide finance, not only government, but we're talking about government finance institutions, we're talking about commercial banks and non-bank financial institutions, which are generally common in Zambia, but we're also trying to see how can we promote innovative finance, I think, which is very, very key. We've seen that, things have not worked when it comes to financing for banks. Obviously, some traction going on with microfinance institutions, but again, the asset base is quite very small. But the very impact investment as a tool has got a lot of innovative means or innovative finance which are going on, which we can promote in order for SMEs to access to grow. But also, it speaks to our work with intermediaries. I think we are very, very critical because, finance doesn't just go from someone who has got finance to a business. There's a middleman in place here who's kind of coordinating, working with both parties, and I think your work that we've been doing WEAC has been quite very, very impressive. But also trying to see how can we promote the capacities of financial intermediaries locally, and we've been having discussion through our global affiliation of the Global Steering Group for Impact Investment. We get these conversations that there's willingness for some of the GFIs to invest in Zambia, but they can't invest directly in business, but they would rather invest in local funds, which is intermediaries. But when it comes to experience and skills, it's really not up to speed with what they're looking for. Partly because it's very, very difficult even for local funds or intermediaries to raise capital locally to fund the businesses. And few things that we've been speaking to is pension funds. How can pension funds get involved in this space? I think they've got one of the largest assets in Zambia and also globally when we look at the structure of pension funds. But their investment is kind of very, very limited to, government securities and, and few listed companies on the Lusaka Stock Exchange. And there's this kind of lack of awareness generally when fixed information asymmetry about existing asset classes which they can invest in, or be it investable assets or appropriate vehicles in which they can channel this fund.
And the financial records that we're saying they need to be audited for them to be validated. But we all know that an SME cannot afford this. And these are the structures that we need to be able to create so that we're able to create a baseline for where we can grow our entrepreneurs. Otherwise, they're starting from a position of being disadvantaged. Thank you.
That was insightful discussion from the panelists right here at Sarova Hotel in the capital city, Lusaka. This is a special edition of the Business Day on Millennium TV, your first business and financial news channel, with me, Paul Shingongo. Now, to wrap up this particular discussion, I am joined once again by Mrs. Nambola Kachumi, the Executive Director of the Women's Entrepreneurship Access Center, in short known as WEAC. I think that was deep, very rich conversations, if you had to ask me. What would you say were your take-home points from the panel discussion?
Right. Well, it definitely was a very interesting discussion. A lot of key issues have come out from the panel discussion. Very interesting to note, that institutions like the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry driving certain economic agenda through policy formulation to support the growth of SMEs in the country. But we also realize that there could be some information gaps. There's lack of awareness in terms of how these policies can enhance SME participation in the economy. We heard from ZDA around issues of, for example, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, how this is providing opportunities for trade, and also addressing some of the inequalities within the region when it comes to issues of export. And I think that is very relevant, especially in the COVID context, where we are looking at how the pandemic itself has hampered movement of goods and services, but also labor, across the continent. So very interesting to hear that side, of the panel. It was also very refreshing to hear from Lupia Circle about
to meet her.
how they managed to to raise
and also the fact that she's been with you for the past 5 years or so is a good testimony, even on the part of WEAC as well.
Absolutely, yes. And so that was very exciting too. We heard from Mr. Hambai Trevor, DFA. He's always a champion of entrepreneurship development in Zambia, and he brought out quite very important metrics around the current situation of SMEs in Zambia. It was also good to note from Bank of Zambia what the central bank is currently doing, specifically to the targeted medium-term refinancing plan, how that has rolled out, what's the absorption capacity. We heard that before there was very little uptake by commercial banks and microfinance institutions, but that has since improved, and they've been able to access over 6.7 billion kwacha. The outlook is positive, but obviously there are still challenges in that. Certain segments of the economy are still not able to access those funds. Yeah, so
I also enjoyed the also pick lessons from what the National Advisory Board mentioned. Very interesting thoughts, especially on the gaps between the investors themselves and the funders.
Absolutely.
You find that your business is not meeting the standard of the investor. You are dreaming too low compared to what the investors want to bring on board. And I don't know what you feel can be done in that regard.
Yes. I think those were very important points that Nabi brought out. And it's quite true, because you find that sometimes we tend to focus on the supply side, and we're always pointing out where the gaps are. But I think we need to realize that there's a lot that needs to happen from the demand side as well, in order to ensure that we position SMEs and startups for funding, because we, as a country, we need to start looking at alternative financing, because we've seen the challenges that are there in traditional access to finance. So definitely impact investing is a key economic driver. We need to understand what the landscape is, what the opportunities are, within the country. What are some of the aspects that will attract investors, especially in impact-related projects? And I think this is very relevant to COVID-19 because, as not only as a continent, but I think the world needs to be more responsive, to solutions that are both short, medium, and long term, but also that are sustainable. And this is what impact investing is looking at, creating sustainability, building eco-inclusive ecosystems. And we're very excited that NABI is pushing that agenda.
Yeah. I think we can talk the whole day concerning issues of SMEs, so many aspects, and of course, a lot of angles were raised from the panel discussion. But I want to appreciate you for hosting this as we are. Congratulations. Don't make this the last time you're hosting a panel discussion.
No, definitely. Actually, we will be concluding with an article. Since March, we've been running articles relating to putting SMEs to the forefront of the economy. So we continue with those conversations, and we will do a concluding article just to summarize what the outcomes of the panel. So thank you for this opportunity. Always glad to partner with Millennium TV. Thank
you so much, Nambola. Wishing WEAC all the best.
Thank you.
Great. This is where we wrap up today's special edition of the business. We were at the panel discussion organized by the Women Entrepreneurship Access Center, WEAC. And of course, various people came through: Bank of Zambia, Ministry of Commerce, ZDA, and of course, other private sector organizations that have benefited from WEAC. Shingongo is my name. On behalf of the entire production, to keep watching Millennium TV.